Bueno. Piñu. Bueno. Piñu.
That pretty much sums up the entire hate for this overall game, but hey everybody, welcome back to a different sort of video. I wanted to talk about the brand new God of War game that was announced at the recent State of Play, God of War Laufey, which is an interesting game, and I honestly am excited for it myself, but it has been receiving a lot of hate online, and I did want to talk about whether or not this hate is justified, and going over the legitimate criticisms for the game, and not fake criticisms based in the idea of this game's woke, I won't play it because it has woman lead, or just misogynistic based quote-unquote criticisms when they're really not. And while I have seen a lot of excitement for this game, I've also seen a majority of hate, not only from the usual grifters, but also just on Twitter with misogynistic memes and just other things as well. While I have seen some legitimate criticisms from YouTubers like Captain Cuba, and also some slight nitpicks but also praises from other YouTubers like Under DeMeo, because some of the legitimate criticisms are pretty valid with what we have gotten from the Norse saga, and there is some elements of this game that does look like it is improving from what we have seen, especially on a combat front, which a lot of the people focusing their criticisms haven't really pointed out. A lot of the criticisms have focused on the idea of this game having the God of War name, but it's not focused on Kratos to some extent, and you're not playing as him, which is a criticism I have seen a lot, even from the original director of God of War 1, David Jaffe, and I wanted to disprove elements of this criticism, but also validate certain other elements, because I do understand why this is being thrown out a lot. The first element of this criticism is based in the idea that this game shares the exact same name as the God of War series, but it doesn't have the particular character that formulates that series. While this is valid, this isn't something new when it comes down to the idea of video games. We have seen particular spin-off games focus around a different character, while still continuing the story of said franchise, but also carrying the same name. For instance, Uncharted Lost Legacy carries the name of Uncharted while not having Nathan Drake as the main lead, but it also continues the story while mentioning him to some extent, but focusing around a different character. While not a big game, obviously that game did not only sell well, but also was very good on a storytelling and gameplay front. While it didn't reinvent the wheel, it still tried to do something interesting and different. Another game is Spider-Man Miles Morales. It also was a spin-off game that carried the mantle of the Spider-Man title, but focused around a separate side character, and also an equal to Peter Parker with his own story. And these games have two different things in common. They are continuing the story, but also they are using characters that were introduced in the mainline entry to expand on them and also give us a taste of what they are like, which is something that some players do want to see, and we have seen this before with other titles of games, like Infamous, for instance. Despite the problems of Infamous Second Son, obviously it shares the mainline title of Infamous while not focusing around the character of Cole McGrath, it focusing on the good ending. Even though it had its problems and it wasn't the original way that they were going to go about it, they also went further and did the same thing when it comes to Infamous First Light. And this isn't something new. Sometimes they'll introduce a character through a mainline entry, and if they are popular enough and also mysterious enough to where we could expand on their character through their own game, sometimes they do that. Uncharted isn't just a name that focuses on Nathan Drake, it's a plural name, just like Infamous, and even maybe the title of Spider-Man, because there are multiple versions of that particular character. The same could be said for other franchises, like Silent Hill. We've had different people take in that protagonist role in different entries, and the same could be said for other games, like Ninja Gaiden, for instance, or even Devil May Cry. We have so many popular characters in those franchises that could even hold up the mantle of that title all on their own. And when it comes to the title of God of War, this is something that isn't just centered around the idea of Kratos. While he is a god of war, other people can have that title if they do fit that mold. While Kratos himself is the god of war, he wasn't always. He had to earn that title. If you play the first game, the title of god of war was Ares's. And when Kratos gets the title of god of war, obviously he perpetuates war, and any type of character could be a god, because this is a series that focuses around that, and when you're fighting them constantly, that perpetuates war itself. And in this game, while we do know that Laufey is obviously a protector of Midgard, she's a seer, she's a giant, and also maybe there's a bit of this godly nature to her as well, because she manages to get into this realm, and she is referred to as a godling, and that is a thing that people are missing, that maybe she did inherit some type of god of war status because she participated in setting into motion the war of the Norse gods, Ragnarok itself, through her son and her husband. She was the catalyst in the same way that Zeus's actions and fears led to the cascading effect to his own downfall, just like Ares. Ares making that one crucial mistake of having Kratos kill his own family led to the cascading effect of him even destroying the Greek pantheon and Ares himself in the first place. And we know with the series history that the title of a god of war can be passed on to someone else, and war itself is something that can also be used for peace and protection, proven by Tyr in the Norse realm. So this criticism is valid. At the same time, we do not know if Faye has actually inherited this title, especially considering that she is also fighting different regions of different gods of war, or even gods themselves in the afterlife. So in a lot of ways, the title of god of war is a plural one, and it still fits within this game. And it also, to further add on to this point, Tyr was locked up by Odin for a long time, even thought dead. So some ways you could actually validate the idea that the title was passed on to Faye while he was imprisoned or dead, with her rebellion against Odin being a war against the Aesir to some extent, and it also would validate this argument. In Tyr's absence, inheriting the title but through peace in the same way he did. Moving on to the next bit of criticism, and that is the overall graphics and character model. I'm going to say this right off the gate. The character model for Faye doesn't really look bad. Honestly, when it comes to translating real people and their faces into a video game, it's always going to look somewhat unrealistic. Just look at Keanu Reeves when it comes to the Matrix free demo that we've seen, and just look at other games. There's always just some element of making the faces look off. And while some people are trying to validate, well, they're just uglifying female characters, let's be honest with ourselves. Using actual real people in video game form is always going to look a bit off. It's something that we've seen with Deborah Ann Wool in the Star Wars games and her other appearances in other video games, and also we have seen it a lot in general. Even the model of Cameron Monaghan for Cal Kestis sometimes does look off, even with the first and second game. And that's just a problem with photorealistic models in general. Sometimes they're still going to look a little bit off. It's the same problem that people have with AI generated stuff. It's always going to look a little bit off on an animation front, on a voice front, and stuff like that. Especially translating a real person into a video game, there's always going to be some elements of inconsistency, regardless of it being a woman or a guy. You can see it in most every video game that uses photorealism. And the people trying to use images of when the actress was younger and those particular photos having modifications to them to deliberately make her look more beautiful in this particular photograph is not really going to validate your argument when you're really comparing the two. Because particular photographs of women always sometimes use modifiers and stuff like that to really enhance those certain visual qualities to them. And I know I'm gonna get called a lot of things for this comment, but when it comes to this narrative about beauty, here's the thing. Not every guy out there is a 10 out of 10 on a handsome or body body front. They're not a Chris Hemsworth, just like every woman shouldn't be held to that standard as well, being like a Jennifer Lopez or an Angelina Jolie or what have you. And when saying this, because I know people are going to take it out of context, I'm being realistic, not insulting, because everyone is different. Everyone looks different. Not everyone can be in their mind's eye what you perceive to be beautiful. And I get that people are going to try to say that this is a video game. Any character can look like anything, and they should look beautiful, and they should look like this, and they should look like that. That is a narrative that is fully built on the idea of entitlement, because when it comes down to it, the game developers had their own looks for things. It's not built around what you think it should be, it's built around what they think it should be, because they are making it. And they're obviously making it for the consumer, but there are a lot of consumers, not just you. If it doesn't appeal to you, that's perfectly fine, because it always can appeal to someone else. It doesn't always have to benefit you, because there's always someone else with a different taste that could appreciate those smaller elements that the developers are putting in, and those things that you don't like. And that is not a bad thing, personally. And the last bit of hate is mainly just because of the fact that you're not playing as Kratos, and people are feeling and using the strawman argument of Faye replacing him, which is blatantly not true, and it's incredibly infuriating that the developers have to come out and clarify that we're still gonna get Kratos games, they're still gonna continue his story, just because we're getting a main continuity game with a different character. Oh, like that's not something we haven't seen before with Prototype 2 and Resident Evil 2 and 3 and other stuff. Even a game series like Watch Dogs has done this, for Christ's sake. This is nothing new, and to add insult to injury, people are trying to justify this argument by using other games as examples, but unlike me, they're just saying, oh, these games, they replaced their male characters with female leads. Oh no. It's like, oh my freaking god. It's an abundance of hypocrisy based in slight misogyny. Well, I do understand why they're trying to use it, and I do understand it to some extent. At the same time, the problem isn't these characters are being replaced by women, it's just they don't like the idea of their favorite character being replaced at all. Even with Devil May Cry, no one liked the idea of Nero replacing Dante, and sometimes they do have to be warmed up to it a little bit. This is why Devil May Cry 5 Nero worked a lot better than Devil May Cry 4 Nero, because a lot of people were just saying that he's Dante Jr., and in Devil May Cry 5, he is changed up in his design and some elements of his personality, while Dante-like, he feels more like his own character compared to the previous go-around. And that's the biggest thing, is sometimes they need to feel like their own entity. And Faye is a character that we've heard about. She's mysterious, and she was someone that we really wanted to learn about, just like Tyr. And when it comes to this game's story, it is actually a plus. While I do understand some of the complaints when it comes to the more modern dialogue and some of the overly goofy elements, like the cosmic cube named Frank, let's be honest with ourselves just a little bit, because this isn't something new to the God of War series. They've always kind of done this. Yes, the dialogue has always had an epic feel to it, but the game has always had this modernism to the dialogue as well, along with their design philosophy. While they've always tried to capture the element of the mythologies, even in the Greek games, you always could tell that these were modern versions of the Greek gods, especially when looking at Hades and a couple other characters. You can't tell me with a straight face and an actual truthful expression that there hasn't been goofiness when it comes to the dialogue and also the overall aesthetic of the God of War older games. Because we all know that that has always been a part of the original games in some small facets. That is there, it's just kind of hidden between the darkness and the bloodshed. While I've already talked about elements of hate and criticism, other elements of criticism when it comes to this new game with the overall gameplay and combat. The gameplay elements of criticism are with the overall idea of the walkie-talkie stuff and the QTEs that were a big part of 2018 and Ragnarok to some extent. While these criticisms are incredibly understandably valid, let's not act like the QTE element isn't a big part of God of War's overall gameplay, even in the older games. Even in story elements, there were QTEs, but it was more combat focused, and I do feel like this is one of those middle grounds that they're going to have to navigate, because this has always been a part of God of War, but there were a different facet to it when it was in the older games compared to the newer ones, and this one does look like they're trying to navigate that very thoroughly by mixing elements from those older games, especially with the changes to combat. A lot of points of criticism have never really actually touched on the combat, because the combat itself from 2018 was very bare bones. Yes, there was some experimentalism with it. Obviously, you can use and switch between different things and you had different stuff, but the hack and slash element of the gameplay and combat experimentalism is slightly there and slightly gone in the newer games. They tried to add it back in elements of Ragnarok. To some extent, it did work and it had more layers than 2018, but this is adding a lot more of the things that we loved about the original, with slight elements of the newer games' combat as well when it comes to the camera angle and that more focused idea of things instead of the more wider angles. You have some of that element of management from the older games and also some elements from the newer games. While there are elements of the UI that are hidden with this demo, and we can kind of tell that when looking at the gameplay with her switching between things and you can't see it. But personally, while the criticisms when it comes to the gameplay are more centered around the walkie-talkie stuff, I do think the camera will become more of a focal point of criticism with them adding this hack and slash element back to the gameplay when it comes to Faye, because you are having those air combos like in Devil May Cry and the older games, and that is a great thing that we are getting compared to the Norse saga with Kratos, or even in Ragnarok with Atreus' gameplay. I think it's brilliant that they are trying to intertwine the two elements of the combat styles of the previous two games when it comes to Ragnarok in 2018 with elements from the older games when it comes to Faye. And personally, while I do love the Norse Saga games, I never really got too into the combat because I love hack and slashes, and they didn't really give me that feeling like the older games did. And this is something that I might actually play because it's bringing those elements back of combat experimentation more from that Greek era, and obviously with elements from Bayonetta and Devil May Cry thrown in there. While I do understand some focal points of the hate and also the criticisms, I'm going to be honest, I do feel like this game is getting a lot more hate than it really should, because it really doesn't deserve any hate at all. While I do understand why some of the reasons that people are hating on it, and I also can understand the criticisms angle of it when it comes to these movie type of games that Sony's been putting out and stuff like that, and sometimes these games are blending together, and I do understand that, but at the same time, a lot of the hate for this game is partially from people that are misinformed, and some of them are just focused on the outrage angle of it and just this misogynistic gender wars bullcrap. And some of those criticisms, so-called, slash hate, can easily be disputed by natural facts about the games and just in general when looking at the cruxes of their so-called arguments, which is something that I'm trying to do in this video, especially when looking at the YouTube reception of the game and just in general. The actual divide of legitimate criticisms and hate for this game is utterly astounding, and I feel like the hate is slightly just forced at this point, because this is the same thing that happened with a game like Ghost of Yotei, and a majority of them are trying to use the justification from the reception of the Tomb Raider remake, which I was excited for, and also the reception of this God of War game and the distinction between it, which also, again, I was excited for. Not everyone really was too into the God of War game, but at the same time, a lot of people were still interested in it to some extent from how the game looked, and we did get a lot of gameplay for it. And a lot of people, again, by the perception of it, were still very excited, and we have seen a lot of that excitement, but also a lot of that hate, and I do feel like this game is just getting a lot of hate for a lot of dumb reasons. And the majority of the hate is just because you're playing as a woman, just like with Ghost of Yotei, and it's just a bunch of bullcrap. Playing as a woman in a video game is not a bad thing. Hell, some of my favorite video game characters are also women. I can give you a list for starters: Jill Valentine, Alice Little, Marin, Grace Ashcroft, and Sherry, along with some other characters. Hell, Bayonetta, for God's sakes. The problem shouldn't be that I'm playing as a female character so that equals bad. It should be whether or not I can connect to their stories and whether or not they are written well. Just like with any male character that I play as in a video game, and trying to use the baffling, stupid argument of throwing out that the game is woke just because it has something you don't like doesn't work either. It just is very invalidating because that word is tossed around for anything and everything. And it's bafflingly stupid that people are still doing that, especially when it comes to the rage baiters, grifters, and just in general a lot of people, because it's just thrown around like candy at this point. But I do stand on the grounds that I do think this game is getting overly hated. I honestly feel like this game is awesome and I personally like it, but I do try to understand some of the criticisms and rebuttal the more stupid ones with actual basic arguments and common sense. With my own personal opinions thrown into this video to some extent, because I do understand that people don't like their favorite characters being replaced, and we see that a lot. This is not a game to replace the idea of Kratos. This game is a parallel story to tie in with the first game. And yet again, this is not something new to the mythos of God of War, because we have seen this a lot, even with a newer title like the Sons of Sparta, and also in the older titles with Chains of Olympus, and a couple other ones. So yeah, if people want to act like this is something new, yeah, this is not new, guys. This is not new. We've seen this type of storytelling before, even with the character of Kratos in the past games. This is nothing new. But let me know your thoughts in the comments down below. Do you guys think this game is overly hated? Are you excited for it? And if you are in the comments posting the usual bullcrap, I am just gonna hide it and delete it, so keep that in mind before you post. I rather keep things civil even if you don't agree. Make sure to like this video if you did enjoy, and actually post a comment to help me go through the algorithm and help this video reach more people, or change it to a dislike if you didn't. It's perfectly fine. Make sure to subscribe to this channel if you did enjoy, and hit the bell notifications button to be notified whether I upload. You guys know the drill there. You can check out some of the other videos on screen and other content, but have a good rest of your guys' and gals' night, morning, afternoon, or whatever it is for you in the world. Peace out. Bye-bye.